Hello and welcome back to another episode of Generation Ochi, the channel on which you shall all witness my slow descent into the netherworld of anime as I attempt to prevent myself from being overcome by the weebs. Before I begin, guys, please comment down below and offer advice about how we should run this channel. I would welcome criticism and suggestions as to our format and content. Content especially. Let me know what you guys want to see us cover. Also, yes, there will be spoilers in this video, but I will try to offer fair warning beforehand. As you know from our intro video on Generation Films, I promised a full review of Erased, and so that is what we are going to do today. As I explained in that video, of all the anime that I checked out, Erased was the one that really pulled me in and kept me watching. I thought that the other shows like Kill la Kill and Dorohedoro were cool, but Erased was addicting. And as I have an addictive personality, what could I do? I'm just happy that I usually fall victim to algorithms in anime rather than, crack. Don't do crack, kids. Anyway, Erased tells the story of 29-year-old Satoru. If Kongo was here, he'd correct my pronunciation there, who from time to time experiences something called revival, a power which allows him to travel back in time just before a tragic event happens, giving him the chance to stop the event from occurring. We don't know exactly how he attained this ability, but it's possibly somewhat related to an event he experienced as a child when 3 children in his community were abducted and murdered. Okay, minor spoiler coming here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Satoru's mother gets very murdered, and the killer gets away before he's discovered. When the police suspect Satoru himself of committing the crime, before he can be apprehended, he experiences revival again. But this time he is sent back to his childhood, where he must try and prevent the murder of the 3 children and save his mother from being murdered in the future. First, I want to quickly touch on the animation. I've said previously that of all the anime I've watched of late, where I have plenty of criticisms to air, the actual animation itself always seems pretty strong. That aspect of anime is usually not an issue, though I do not pretend to be an expert in this regard. When it comes to Erased though, given its realism, it doesn't quite have the opportunity to be as interesting or surreal visually as anime set in more fantastical worlds do. Of course, Erased does have the one semi-magical element of revival, and I will say the little cutscenes that the show uses to portray a revival coming on are not that visually appealing or impressive. However, I do still like the animation a lot. It's a nice break from all the dystopia of other anime, and the artwork does a great job of helping to convey the emotions and at times the amiability or depravity of some of the characters. Secondly, we have to touch on the credits, because as I've learned, a good anime cannot fall short with its title sequence. As a matter of fact, I've noticed that sometimes in anime the credits happen mid-show, which is kind of a new experience for me. As for Erased, not the craziest opening, especially given its down-to-earth story, but the theme song is super catchy, if not as melancholy and romantic as the songs of some other anime. Okay, now let's really get into things and touch on the show's characters. The characters really set Erased apart from much of the other anime I've seen. Not just recently either, but ever. But this isn't because the characters are super exaggerated and unique. Rather, they're kind of just realistic and mundane, which for anime is abnormal. There are no bombastic personalities to go with overly stylized hair and flamboyant clothing. I've never really experienced anime realism in a show, though of course Isao Takahata's masterpieces are films that are almost too real sometimes. They hit hard, and yes, I cried a lot during Grave of the Fireflies, but hey, I cried at the end of Home Alone 2 as well, so take that as you will. Nonetheless, the characters in this show really made me question what makes anime anime. What separates anime from the rest of filmdom? I mean, to me, Erased could be compared against other live-action shows on Netflix and other popular streaming sites. The main character in this series, Satoru, is really 2 distinct characters because of the way in which the show separates the mind of 29-year-old Satoru from the child's body he's inhabiting. I feel like I only intimately got to know the 29-year-old Satoru because that's the character who's narrating the story, that's the character whose thoughts we hear. The child Satoru acts like a child in terms of his dialogue with other characters and his physical movements. So it's almost like when he speaks to people he loses a bit of adult Satoru, even though that's who is supposedly controlling the child's body. This made for a really interesting dynamic, because even if I was confident in the elder Satoru, I still wasn't sure if the child Satoru was going to come through. I also think that this plot element is representative of how we sometimes can act childish or silly while at the same time feeling rational and intellectual in mind. There's often a gap between human thought and behavior. There are a lot of other characters in the show as well, but most of them are pretty plain. That said, there are 4 more who to me really stand out. The first 2 are Kaio and her mother Akemi. Kaio is Satoru's classmate and one of the children he has to save from abduction. Her mother subjects her to constant physical and emotional abuse, and because of this, Kaio becomes easy prey for her eventual killer. The way Kaio and her mother are portrayed is an aspect of the show that is just too real. Kaio often acts disaffected around her friends and seemingly devoid of life, and it's really heartbreaking to watch, and certainly reminiscent of an abused child whose innocent and gentle nature has been stifled by the malevolent actions of an adult. And Akemi, she's just disturbing. As soon as I saw her, I instantly thought to myself, this woman needs the Steve Wilkos show and a dose of Dan the Man. I don't know if there's any Steve fans out there, but if there is, I know you'll appreciate that reference. Anyway, Kaio and her mother represent the best of the show's realism. Then there was Jun, the delivery guy from Satoru's town, who is known for befriending young students around his house, a behavior which makes him the prime suspect in the children's abductions in the original timeline. Jun has a stutter, but he also seemingly has some other mental issue or is perhaps on the spectrum somewhere, and it's really interesting to see an anime try and convey this personality trait realistically. I'm definitely no expert here, but my sense is that they do a really good job. Finally, there's Gaku. Gaku is Satoru's charming homeroom teacher and is the closest thing Satoru has to a father figure. Spoiler alert, Gaku is obviously also a complete psychopath and the guilty party in the slayings of the children and Satoru's mother. I don't think this character or his arc is particularly original, but he's still executed well. Okay, poor choice of words. I like that when he reveals himself to be the killer, he doesn't all of a sudden become this unrestrained, wrathful monster. Instead, he's the same charming guy with just a touch of mania mixed in. That said, I can't really talk more about him without getting into my thoughts on the story, so let's move in that direction. There actually isn't that much to say about the story. Its genre and structure aren't that extraordinary or original, but there are a few elements that make it feel new. Perhaps I might even say that I don't actually feel like I've personally seen this kind of story played out in an anime before. And if you know of an anime with a similar narrative, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to check it out. Anyway, a special ability that allows a character to either travel back to the point right before a bad event occurs or sense that a bad event is going to happen is definitely not a new idea. However, I like that this anime and its respective manga use this plot device to allow its main characters to stop tragedies from occurring, rather than a show such as Dead Like Me, which actually has its characters play the role of Grim Reaper, showing up to sites where a death is about to take place and seeing it through. Also, we don't often see a serial killer story played out from the perspective of kids, so that's interesting, and is perhaps something that the medium of anime allows for, where it would be more of a challenge in live action. Though, of course, there is a live action version of Erased, which I hope to watch soon. And if you've already seen the live action version, please let me know if it's still worth a watch if I've already seen the anime. I think overall what makes Erased's story good is not that its elements are different, but that they are executed well. Spoiler alert, I was used to the setup enough going into the show that I was able to predict the series' big reveal long before it happened. Gaku was nice, but too nice, and he kept trying to prevent Satoru from pursuing leads. And Jun was certainly creepy, but I knew it couldn't be him because, well, you know the deal, too creepy means too obvious to be the killer. By the way, in real life, that isn't always true. If someone seems creepy, probably stay away. But I digress. The story wasn't so predictable that it didn't still keep me wondering just a little bit. And despite the fact that I figured out who the killer is, it's not like I had any idea what was going to happen in the end. Though as it's made by the Japanese, I did know that it was going to conclude in a way that left me feeling happy and also weirdly horrible and reflecting on the nature of existence all at the same time. The distinctly Japanese character of Erased aside, watching this series actually somewhat reminded me of some South Korean serial killer films I've seen, and believe me, that is a high compliment. Anyways, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought of Erased. If you haven't seen it, go see it, then come back and comment. Subscribe to this channel. We can really use you on board as we get going here with Generation Ochi. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. For now, my name is American Ben, Generation Ochi. I'll catch you next time. Peace.